Oh man, because whatever, as soon as you do that, the American rice floods the market. You go to Ghana now, there ain't no rice farmers left. There's like 2 or 3. They're making horrible rice because they got no money because all the American rice flooded the market. Worse still, they say this is free economics, and then one of the other conditions they say is you can't, because it's free classical economics, you're not allowed to subsidize rice production anymore. You've got to stop. So you have an even playing field for all the rice. But guess who subsidizes their rice more than anybody else? United States of America. That's about like 2/3 of the rice is paid for by. It's not even like they're playing by the same rules. It's giving you a completely new set of rules. And so obviously the Ghanaians can't compete. And if you go to the rural areas in Ghana, it's just poverty. Poverty did not exist before because you had rice production, right? And at the same, so making it worse, you've got poverty. You've got poverty. You've got no rice production. And you still got to pay back the loan that was to make better rice. Like, this the craziness of the economy, right? Economics is just madness, right? They're still paying back the loan today for the thing that destroyed their economy. Madness, right? So, and this is the thing that formalized Pan-Africanism never really dealt with because it didn't deal with the issue of the nation state, right? And in some ways it gets worse. And this is again why. Sometimes I'm quite critical about it, and we have to really be critical about these politics and really separate them out and actually say that was a bad idea. And too much of the time we are looking for unity, right? This is what happens with the OAU. The Casablanca group don't really agree. They think it's a bad idea, but they say unity is more important. And because of that, we're going to sacrifice this, and it leads to that, right? And I love Malcolm X, and I usually won't hear me say anything other than praise for Malcolm X. But Malcolm X does the same thing. So at the foundation of the OAAU, and Malcolm calls his organization, starts in America before he dies, the Organization of Afro-American Unity, after the OAU. And what he says is, look, you've got to put everything aside, you've got to bring people together, and he kind of praises this move of bringing those people together. He even goes as far to saying the Congo, at the time they formed the OAU, Patrice Lumumba had just been murdered. And Patrice Lumumba had been murdered, obviously the CIA involved, obviously Belgium involved, but also there's Africans involved, right? There's Congolese involved. And Shombe, who is the president at the time, he was implicated. They knew he was involved. He was part of that murder, right? Now, Malcolm loves Lumumba. Malcolm spent about 2 years just criticizing Shombe and his politics, etc., etc. But even Malcolm gets caught up in this unity book, where he says, no, it's great though, because at OAU, we're mature enough to still have Shombe gets a seat at the table. He's the president, you've got to give him a seat at the table. And for me, that's terrible. You can't do that. You can't do that. If you're saying that politics is terrible, it has to go, right? We have to have ideological purity on these issues. And unfortunately, we haven't. And then if you trace what happens, so you get to this point where that's 60, my years are terrible, let's say 60, in the 60s, the early 60s. The OAU is formed in the early 60s. Even 62, 63. And that is really one of the legacies of formal Pan-Africanism. Okay? I mean, really, you have to look at that and say the OAU takes its roots from 1900, the Pan-African Congress movement, 5th Pan-African Congress, OAU. They're very connected, right? So if you're going to criticize the OAU, you have to criticize Pan-Africanism, formalized Pan-Africanism, because it really is that, right? And then it gets worse. So after the OAU, it doesn't really work, and the OAU doesn't really support the more Marxist revolutionary struggles. It kind of says it's going to, like Mozambique and Angola, but doesn't really do anything. It says, yeah, support, but doesn't really do it, right? Doesn't really intervene. And it starts to fall to pieces, and then eventually it's Gaddafi that suggests we have an African Union. So the African Union comes out of the OAU, right? And would anybody here defend the African Union? Like, terrible. Jeez, the African Union completely sells out 100% to Western economic interests. 100%. I mean, not even a little, didn't even pretend to do anything else. It just sells out to Western economic interests. In 2001, I think it is, Thabo Mbeki actually pioneers the NEPAD, a new economic partnership with African development, which basically is going to the West and begging for stuff and promising to be part of their economy. That's what NEPAD is. NEPAD still exists, right? This is still the formal movement, right? So that's what I'm saying. If you trace this movement, this is the legacy of it. That is what it is. It isn't anything else, right? You have to take Garvey out of that movement because he's not in it. You have to take Nkrumah out of that movement. He's not really in it either, right? You have to take the black radicalism. That's not the black radicalism that I know, at least. And I actually think that Malcolm would have been horrified what happened and how that developed, right? This is what I'm saying. When we talk about Pan-Africanism, we have to be critical. And I 100% agree that Pan-Africanism is important, but it's kind of revolutionary Pan-Africanism. And what does that mean? And how is that different? And so, what that means and how is that different is we have to go firstly to Garvey. I mean, Garvey is really important. So those principles has to be grassroots. Has to be grassroots. Has to be the masses of the people. Has to also be non-nation state. The non-nation state is really important as well. Right? Really important. Has to effectively let's create a new government, which is why I was really positive to hear not civil society. Because that's a trap that they always tell black people, civil society. You just worry about the symptoms of your problem, right? So we're good at that, right? We'll talk about knife crime, we'll talk about malaria, we'll talk about HIV, we'll talk about, I don't know, they're the symptoms of the problem. The problem is that we do not control the economic and political. Listen, that's the problem. That's about as simple as that. The problem is you have a global system that says white people are better and acts as though white people are better, and it exploits everybody else, particularly black people. That's the problem. That's racism. And as much as it's important to try and fix the symptoms of our problems, you will never solve the problem if you just focus on the symptoms. And that's that civil society trap, right? Let's just make our suffering a bit easier. No, we have to deal with the actual disease. And the only way to deal with that disease is to end this political and economic system. There is no other way. Capitalism is built on our exploitation. It's always been built on our exploitation. It is still built on our exploitation. Oh, in 20 years it carries on, it will continue to be built on our exploitation. It is really, and this is really important. Race and even whiteness aren't just, they're not attitudes, they're not ideas. It's not even just ideology, it's political economy. Right? It's not a coincidence that the richest countries in the world per capita are white and the poorest continent in the world is black. That's not a coincidence. That is how it is meant to be. That is how it was designed from beginning to end. In the 17th, 16th, 17th century, 16th, 18th century, I don't know, 17th, something like that. I'm not a historian, so never ask me dates. Let's say it was a long time ago. Anyway, there's a botanist, I think it was 18th century, 17th something. A botanist, Carl Linnaeus. Have you heard of Linnaeus? Swedish botanist wrote this really big thing where he categorized all the plants, and he said, and in this book, it's a little bit of the book is about the species of man, and in that it's very clear. Europaeus albus is at the top, white, and then you have American rubiscus, American Indians, who are tan, they're irascible, they're a bit funny, but you know they're not us, right? Then you have Asiatic Luridas, people in Asia, right? They're a bit worse. You can't really trust them, right? And at the bottom of that, you have Afro-Niger, crafty, lazy, black, governed by the arbitrary will of the master. Very clear racial hierarchy. And as I said, look at global wealth inequality today, and you will see that very clear racial hierarchy. Europe at the top, West at the top. Then you've got Asia's kind of emerging, and then you've got Africa at the bottom. Not a coincidence. This is how it's meant to be. Right? There's a reason why 3 million. Listen, this part of Africa, 3 million children die every year for no reason. They just haven't got food. They haven't got food. They haven't got health care. 3 million in one part of the country. Right? That's not a coincidence. Things haven't got any better. Let's stop pretending. Just because you've got a few black people doing okay, it don't mean anything's got any better. In fact, in many ways, it got worse. Like actually worse. Right? Many ways. Right? So. That's why you have to, if we're talking about Pan-African, revolutionary Pan-Africanism has to be about how do you overturn that system, not how do you integrate into that system. And too much of formal Pan-Africanism was how do we just become part of it, right? How do we get a better deal from it, right? And that has to end 100%. So, and I'll end. I'm going to end on this because this is what we're trying to do, and it's probably hopefully similar to PL Umoja. Is if you look at Malcolm X, I love Malcolm. Malcolm for me. Malcolm's prophetic in many ways about how he understands racism. Basically, everything that Malcolm said 50 years ago happens. Happens 100%. You're never going to have freedom from racism. The best thing you're going to have is token equality, where a few black people get some stuff. Yeah, I get stuff. That's great, wonderful. It doesn't mean anything for most people, right? The masses don't have anything. That's why everybody's celebrating black professors. If I get made a professor, it don't make no difference to you. Why are you celebrating? It really makes no difference to you, right? It's really important. We have to look at, we should never look at how the few of us who are doing well are doing. Look at the masses of us. If you look at the masses of us today, we're doing as bad, but we're doing worse. We're actually doing worse today than we were previously, right? So Malcolm kind of takes, because Garveyism isn't radical. Again, so I have to say, I love Garvey, but Garvey's problematic in many ways, right? Garvey's kind of embraces capitalism. Garvey's sort of like a let's create our own black empire. I actually think had Garvey been able to carry on his work, he'd have become more radical by nature. Because if you look at what he's talking about, no nation state, you're going to take back Africa. Well, if you do that, then I think it's grassroots. Automatically, you're going to come to a much more radical version of the economy. But he doesn't get there because it never happens, right? So what does Malcolm do? Malcolm picks up Garveyism. This is one thing we really don't think about. Malcolm's basic philosophy is Garveyism. Really is. His father's in the Garvey movement and he's killed when he's young. And his mother, his father and mother, really. Good point, that's a good correction. Father and mother in the Garvey movement. And if you look at what he's talking about with the Organization of African American Unity, it just is the UNIA. It really is. Let's just recreate the UNIA, but let's deal with some of the problems of the UNIA. The main one that it was too capitalist. So Malcolm's anti-capitalist. Malcolm isn't anti-white. So Garveyism comes across very Garvey's like, don't race mix, no anti-whiteness, etc. And Malcolm takes that and says, well, let's not be anti-white people, but let's be anti-white systems, right? So Malcolm deals with some of the problems of Garveyism and creates the OAAU. And this is what always gets me. You have a lot of people who talk about being the children of Malcolm and Malcolm's legacy. Malcolm dies and leaves. The speech, second founding rally of the Organization of Afro-American Unity, says 100% clearly what Malcolm's political program is, what Malcolm's political vision is, and somehow everybody who says they're the children of Malcolm, no one did it. Like, it's not even close. It's like he said, dude, this. It's simple, but no one picks it up, right? So that's what we've done. We just said, well, let's pick it up. Let's just take what he did, and let's pick it up, and let's run that. And how that works is, it works like the UNA. So you have a chapter. You have chapters all around the world. You have money you have to pay into that, because you have to be independent, right? And then you link up those chapters, and then in that, and really importantly, structurally, it basically is a government. So you have a Department of Education, a Department of Health, a Department of these things, but it's collectively decided by the people in the organization. And eventually what you have, if it really works, is an organization that supplants a nation state. An organization that we're all part of, we all pay our taxes into, right? And then you don't need a nation state. Nation state disappears because you've got your own self-governed organization. And that's the kind of Pan-Africanism we need. And it actually sounds like that's the kind of Pan-Africanism that you're evoking as well. I'll stop there.